A promise that you can change your fortunes. Begin again.
Finding it, though. That's not the hard part. It's letting go.
It's hard to let go, especially when it's for something you've grown so used to. It makes you dread the idea of having to
begin again.
And that's what I was struggling with on this last game project. Towards the end of 2023, Donkey hosted the first big mode game jam. Me and a couple friends decided to join in on the fun. I wasn't too thrilled about the theme though. It was just the word mode. I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? Maybe I wasn't feeling creative at the time, but I couldn't think of anything good. We ended up deciding on a more lukewarm idea and used this as an opportunity to cross some things off the game dev bucket list. The idea is pretty simple. You have two distinct modes, a 2D mode where you interact with a flat interface, and a 3D mode where you run around in three-dimensional space and interact with objects. So yeah, no clever twist on the theme, just enough to check the box and move on. But like I said, we use this as an opportunity to make some cool stuff we haven't had the chance to make yet. Joey was the artist on this project. He made all the beautiful retro art. Joey wanted to make a fishing game. Now fishing games aren't really my thing. I never played them and I've barely fished in real life, but Joey really was into this idea of making a chill fishing game. And you know, I saw it as a fun challenge, so we decided this was going to be a fishing game. I should also mention I never made a 3D game before this, so that was also a fun challenge. And for some reason I didn't think I had enough on my plate, so I added one more challenge, which was to mix unlikely game genres together. Hence the title of the video. I thought mixing fishing and horror was a pretty cool, unique idea. Since the jam, I did notice a few other games pop up, but still a fairly unexplored genre. And since we had a theme to follow, it gave ours a unique twist. Speaking of, going back to the 2D 3D mode idea, to make that work with our fishing game, we decided to implement a Game Boy-like device called the Fishman. So you use this thing to do the fishing, aka the 2D mode. After figuring that out, all the other ideas started falling into place, which brings us to my other buddy Jacob, the writer of the group, who wrote all the story, dialogue, and spooky lore. As the player, you work as a new employee for Beholder Industries, who has you fishing at night in this little pond. Only the pond is not so little, it's a lot deeper than it looks. You're tasked with filling a fish barrel by morning, and with each night you're faced with new creepy threats, which makes completing your shift a little more difficult. At this point we had a pretty well fleshed out idea, and it was time to start development. So we got Joey working on 3D art like the pond area, Jacob's writing dialogue and helping anywhere else he can, because that's how it goes when you only have 3 people working on a game. And I was trying to figure out how to put this whole thing together. I don't think a game idea like this is that difficult to make, especially if you're using any of the popular game engines like Unity, Unreal, or Godot, but that was exactly my problem. I didn't use any of those, so development was probably more of a headache in a lot of ways than it should have been. Just to give you some backstory here, when I was a kid, I wanted to make games, so I did what I'm sure a lot of us did and googled how to make game. It doesn't take much to realize you need to use a game engine, and then it's just a matter of picking one. Now at the time, I was terrified of coding. I was very intimidated by it, so I just avoided it completely. I eventually stumbled upon Game Creator 001. No coding was needed, so I just had to focus on the logic and learn how the software works. Perfect. Only it wasn't so perfect. I don't want to shit on this engine because I owe a lot to it. It helped me get started with gamedev, and it was a good tool for making games when there was nothing else that worked for me. But this one only gets you so far. There were a lot of red flags I tried to ignore or work around for a long time. I used this engine off and on for like 10 years, so yeah, I wasn't exactly ready to
begin again.
So here's how it went. Because of the engine's limitations, I tried to focus on the pain points and get those out of the way. First one I could think of was the Fishman screen. How was I going to render a 2D screen in 3D space? Well, the answer is you don't. The only thing I could think to do is put the screen on the UI and line it up with the 3D mesh. Not great, but it works. The next big problem was collision. This game engine has some pretty bad collision. Here you can see in Silent Hill, it's got this really nice collision. When you run into something solid like the wall, you slide along it. Pretty standard stuff. For some reason, collision like this from over 25 years ago is not possible in 001. I set up the player movement and first-person camera and immediately noticed I was getting stuck on everything. That slidey behavior just doesn't happen in this engine. Maybe if I was smarter or more patient, I could have figured something else out, but this was a game jam. I didn't have a lot of time. My workaround for this was to just push the player away from colliding objects. It looks pretty janky, but at least you don't get stuck all the time. Those were the two main pain points. I mean, there were definitely other little things, like you can't multi-select or group things together, which for sure slows down development, but I've been putting up with it for 10 years, so I made it work. Now it was time to make a fishing game. We scattered worms around the map to pick up, that's your bait. Then you grab the fishman and cast your line. You get the option to pick which depth you want to drop your hook, and here's where we got to implement this really cool idea Jacob came up with. What's happening here is you're moving the hook and exploring the depth for items of interest. You don't know what those items are until you zoom in and reveal them. They could be fish or treasure, junk or hazards, which of these clumps of algae you'll want to avoid, otherwise you'll gunk up your hook and have to recast. So once you find a fish you want to catch, you'll select it with the lure tool and play this DDR style minigame to lure the fish into biting the hook. After that, you reel it in and put it in the fish barrel. While you're exploring the depths, you can also use the grab tool and treasure and junk to play a different minigame where you try to snatch these items for money. You can then use the money to buy upgrades and preventatives at the tackle box. So that's the 2D mode covered. The 3D mode was a lot of fun. We tried to think of different distractions to get the player away from the fisherman. Most of our ideas involved monsters that try to kill you. Not all of them though, like this guy named the Feaster. All he's interested in is eating fish. You can buy a chum bucket to keep him from eating your fish, but you can also just walk up to him and scare him off. There's also a few lanterns around the pond. Occasionally one will go out and you have to relight them. You do not want them all to go out. The next creepy monster is the Shrieker, and that's exactly what she does. If you're not paying attention, this thing will sneak up behind you and try to take your life.
Welcome to Chili's.
But if you just simply look at it, it will shriek and run off. If you'd rather not constantly look behind your back, you can buy these bear traps. Final creature is the Giggler. Every now and then he'll come out laughing and start chasing you, so you just gotta run until he loses interest, or you can buy these decoys to distract him. I think that about covers everything. You just gotta survive 5 nights, and each night gets a little darker and a little more hectic. I'm sorry, Joey. This probably isn't the chill fishing game you thought it'd be, but it's interesting, and it makes my hands sweaty. And you may be wondering, what happens if you don't fill the fish barrel by morning? Well, I don't want to spoil it. Just play the game and find out. So that's Bellows Below. To be honest, it was pretty frustrating to develop in 001, to the point where I finally broke from my shackles and decided to try something else. I've been using Godot ever since and haven't looked back. Coding is really not that bad. You just gotta keep doing it and you'll get more comfortable and better over time. It sounds so obvious when I say it out loud, but when I was making this game, starting over with a new game engine just felt dumb, and then I proceeded to implement the jankiest workarounds. Regardless, I like how the game turned out. Shout out to Joey and Jacob for lending their talents on this project. Go check out the game. It's free on itch.io. We released an update. It's got multiple endings now and this cool compendium thingy that shows all the endings you unlocked. That's it, bye.
Like and subscribe, or you'll die. Boo boo pee pee, ha ha hee hee. Oh yeah.
Begin again.